Good morning, everybody. Are you happy to be here this morning? The second question I have for you, and one that I'll be asking you all year long, is, are you thankful for the cross? I hope that you are. It is on the cross that Jesus died, and the penalty for sin and the justice of God on that cross was satisfied. And so I hope that you give thanks for it, because it is the life-changing thing that God has provided for all mankind, through which we become new people, better people, saved people. A people who stand out from the world around us. With that said, I want to draw your attention to one simple phrase that's going to be the basis for our sermon this morning. The phrase sounds rather unorthodox. It sounds like the opposite of what we often hear. You will hear many people, whether they want to say it or not, they will live like it. They will not maybe admit it to themselves or admit it to other people, but they live like this is their mantra. They will live as though they want to be the best. They want to be the most. They want to be the first. They want to be the top. They want to be the most prominent, the most important, the most successful, the most this, the most that, the top of this heap, the top of this food chain, the top of this totem pole. Christianity is not about striving to be the best person among your peers. Christianity is not about striving with naked, raw ambition to get to the top of the mountain by any means necessary. And by the mountain, I mean of worldly acclaim. Christianity is not about being the most. Christianity is about being the least. So as weird as it may sound, I am going to use this phrase, and I hope you'll join me in using it in this sermon and for the rest of our lives. I want to be the least. I am, or I strive to be, the least. And that just sounds so backwards, especially in our Western culture, where we put so much emphasis on being the most, the best, the highest, the top. No, Christianity is not for that. The sermon is built around a single text that was just read to us, but let's read it again. Matthew 19:29 and 30. The Master says, "Everyone that has forsaken houses, brethren, sister, father, mother, wife, children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last," now you can even stick in a little e there and make that word least, "shall be first." Those who, just to go to the end of the statement as the thesis for the sermon, those who will scratch and claw, who will step on or step over anyone they can to get to the top of the worldly pyramid, will in time, when God sets things right, be knocked down to the bottom. But those who have been stepped on, those who have been stepped over, those who have been pushed aside, or, as Christians should do, those who have humbly allowed others with more vain and naked ambition than themselves to step over them, who have allowed others to walk on them, who have with meekness and mildness let others go before them, they, when judgment comes, they, when the day of reckoning is made, they, when the day of setting right has happened, they who are last will be placed the first. So my goal is not to be the most. It is to be the least, and trust that God will sort out the ranking when that day comes. With that big picture idea established, I want to give you 4 things about which I want to be the least. And I hope you'll join me in those things as well. 4 areas in which we have the opportunity as God's people to stand out by not being the way everyone else does, everyone else acts, by not acting the way everyone else acts. By treating our fellow people differently from the way other people might treat them. And in these 4 ways, we'll put ourselves at the bottom of the totem pole to be the least like everyone else. And in so doing, act like Christ would have us act. First of all, I want to be the least among the careless. That is to say, I want to be the least among those who would rather have fun than be righteous. In the text we read, Jesus talks about being prepared, if necessary, to forsake your brothers and your sisters. And let's summarize that idea as your peers, because that's what your brothers and sisters are. They're around your same age. They are part of your same cultural generation. They have similar interests and likes and dislikes as you. If you're going to get into mischief as a young person, it's not going to be with your mom and dad. It's going to be with your brothers and sisters. So these are the ones, your peers, your fellows, your common people, that you will associate with, and younger, more foolish years, you'll get into mischief with and get into trouble with. Now what's supposed to happen is you grow up, you get a little older, get a little wiser, get a little more grounded, And so you don't act as foolish as you used to act. You don't do as many reckless and dumb and dangerous things as you used to do. You don't live such a worldly life like you used to live when you were all kind of peer pressuring yourself to top one stupid thing with an even stupider thing. You're supposed to grow up and grow out of that, but some people just do not. And some people just find new and more adult ways to live recklessly, to live carelessly, to live as though their life is theirs to command, that they can do with it whatever they please, and whatever pleases them, they will do. And that is the mentality of the world, generally speaking. If it feels good, do it. If you like it, have it. If you want it, take it. If it makes you happy, you should. You're entitled to it. That is the same kind of mischievous mentality that we had as children when we were running around with our peers, our brothers or sisters or what have you. But Jesus says, be prepared to forsake that. If it comes to you where you are compelled or you are challenged or you are dared to do something that is of the worldly way, to do something that puts the world ahead of Christ, you be prepared to say no, and don't live like that. Who they would say, let's do all this because everyone else is. No, I will be the least, not like everyone else. I will be the least. I will be at the bottom. I will be the least likely to do that. To quote from the Apostle Paul, listen to Romans 13, starting in verse 11. Paul says, we know the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, because now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. Just pause real quick. Obviously, there's more to the reading, but what he means by that is the day of our salvation, the day of the second coming of Christ, the day in which all things will be made right, a theme which Paul talks about a lot in the second half of Romans, or really the last two-thirds of Romans. That is the day of our salvation. So it's not looking back on the moment you became a Christian. It's looking in the moment of judgment, when God will make everything right and bliss will be hereafter. So that day is drawing nearer and nearer and nearer, a fact which careless and reckless people don't even worry about. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. So let us cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness. Those are all the ways of sinful excess that people revel and party and live like. Not in strife or envying, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make no provision for the flesh. Do not live in such a way where you say, what can I give me today? What can I use, what can I have, what can I do that satisfies my cravings, my worldly longings, my fleshly desires? What little sinful treat can I give myself? I'll give God 95%, but what 5% will I retain for me? No, you can't do that. You must forsake that. You must forsake that careless attitude, that attitude of that tomorrow is going to be just as fun as today is. No, Paul says tomorrow is one day closer to the day of reckoning. And when that day finally comes, you will be counted either among those who are faithful and worthy, or unfaithful and unworthy to receive life forevermore. You live in such a way where you think what God would have me do is more important than what my peers would want me to do. And when they challenge me, when they ask me, when they encourage me to go with them to live sinfully, I will say no. And when they say why, I will say, because my master forbids it. Because I live for him. I lived for me before I became a Christian, and then I died, and I rose to be a servant of his. So I want to be the least among the careless. Number two, I want to be the least among the thoughtless. And specifically what I'm talking about here are those who give no thought or give no concern about how they speak to other people. In the text, Matthew 19 text, Jesus mentions being prepared if necessary to forsake even your father and mother. Be prepared even to forsake your wife or your children. These are the people in your life that you are going to be the closest to where if someone should attack, generally speaking, it should be like this. If someone should attack them, you will be the first one to defend them. If someone is coming after them, you're the first one to jump in front of them and defend them with your physical life if necessary. If someone is speaking evil of them, you're the first one to correct them and to correct the record about them. And you will be the most patient and the most kind and the most considerate and the most loving toward these people because they are as close to you as any can be. This is your mother we're talking about. This is your dad we're talking about. These are your children or your spouse we're talking about. It should be like that. But you know as well as I do, there are people in this world who speak horrible things about their mama. And there are people in this world who do and say terrible things about their dad. And there are parents in this world who mistreat their children And there are husbands who beat their spouses. And there are wives who talk bad about their husbands. Relationships in this world are growing more and more commonly sinful in the way they are handled. You need to be the least like that. So let me take that idea and just zero in on one specific thing. Let's talk about parents for a second. How do we talk to our parents? If you still have parents who are living, you young people, how do you talk to your mom and dad? At least when I was a kid, I was very polite and very respectful to all my friends' parents. Very polite, very respectful. I was a yes sir, yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am kind of kid to all my friends' parents when I went over to their house because, she was the one who was going to make me, some sunny delight if I was thirsty. And if I wasn't polite, I wasn't going to get anything. You're going to be extra polite to them. And then you get home, and because you take your parents for granted, because you were so familiar and comfortable with them, you backtalk, you sass, you disrespect. Okay, now I know a lot of parents who are very kind, who are very patient, who are very considerate, who give second, third, fourth, 10 chances to their kids' friends. But then when the kid is gone and the door is shut, now it's condescension and anger and short temper and not even a second chance. You got one chance and then that's it. It should not be like that. It should not be like that, kids to parents, their parents. It should not be like the parents to their kids. If there is something that allows you to be kind and polite and patient with other kids, you should be kind, polite, and patient to your own. If there is something about being respectful and courteous and considerate to other kids' parents, you should be kind, courteous, and respectful and considerate to yours as well. Let that kind of evil speak not be spoken among you. Other kids will be disrespectful to their parents. You will not be. Other parents will be rude to their kids. You will not be. Why? Because listen to Paul, Colossians 3:8. Put these things away from you: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, a word which we almost always just use to talk about speaking evil of God, but the word just means speaking evil. When you sass, you're blaspheming. That's the same sin. Filthy communication, let those things be out of your mouth. One chapter later, 4:6. Let your speech always be with grace, favor, and then he says, seasoned with salt, flavor. Salt brings out the flavor of something. All right, garnish your speech with the salt of grace, with the flavor of favor, so that your words are kind and good and Christian, so that you may know how to answer every man. Paul says, put evil speech away from you. It doesn't matter who you're talking to, parent to child, child to parent, or spouse to spouse. I know a lot of spouses who project out in public like they're the perfect couple, and then they close the door, and they are horrible to each other, to the way they speak to each other, to the way they talk to each other, to the way when they argue, which it is good and healthy and right for spouses to argue. It's how you resolve conflict. It's how you come to the right decision for the family. So that kind of back and forth debate is good. But when you store up a storehouse of insults and why do you always and you nevers, and when you store up all of these slights and insults that you've held on to for the past 6 months so you can just unleash the torrent of them in the middle of the argument, you can't do that. I can say all this because my wife's not here this morning. You can't. No, I can't do that either. None of us should do that. That is evil communication. That is filthy speech. That is bad talk. Our speech to each other, whether it's your child, your parent, or your spouse, should be seasoned, flavored with favor, so that we know how to speak. That's what Paul says, so that you know how to speak. If you remove all these things, what's left? What's left is a speech of kindness, of generosity, of patience, of fairness, of meekness and love, the speech of Christ, the speech of Christians. Other people will talk bad to other people. You be the least among them. What next? I want to be the least among the heartless. And this is really getting to, pun intended, the heart of what this text is about. The text, again, Jesus mentions being prepared to be the last so that you'll be the first later. Because those who are the first will be the last. Those who put themselves first, those who insist upon their way, those who with ambition strive and climb and scratch and claw and kick and punch and push aside others to get ahead, they will eventually, when that time comes, be put down, while those who have been put down will be elevated. Those who have been humbled will be exalted. A teaching that is taught all throughout Scripture. Let me read you something from Proverbs. This is from the wise augur, not from Solomon, but Proverbs 30, verse 14. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, whose jaw teeth are like knives. They devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. These words here came 1,000 years before Jesus' words in Matthew 19. 2,000 years before I'm speaking right now. But you notice nothing has changed. In our day, there are people who will abuse and take advantage of those who are lesser than them as they perceive it. The poor, the less fortunate than them, so that they can have more while they remain poor. In Jesus' day, there were people who were taking advantage of the poor so that they could have more. In the days of the Proverbs writer, there were people taking advantage of the poor so that they could have more. That has been a constant. If you have it, you have with it the power to keep it and to keep others from having it so you can have more of it. That constant has remained. It has been the way in which people get ahead. Whatever you have to do, do it. Whatever you have to think it, say it. Go there. Act that way. Because all that matters is that you reach the top of the totem pole. That you become the best. That you become the most important, the most esteemed, the most highly sought after, the most acclaimed, the most prosperous. And that is not the way of God. It is not the way of Christ. Now let me ask you a question. Forget, I'm going to sound like the devil on purpose here. Forget spiritual things for a second. Forget eternal salvation with God. Forget the righteous judgment that is to come. Forget all that. Just think about the here and now. What are you prepared to do? How far are you prepared to go to get whatever you want in this world? All right? I want you to think about that. Don't think about, well, I know what's more important is salvation, and that's more important than the world. Okay, well, forget salvation. Let's just forget that. Take it off the table. What is your worldly life like? What are your worldly goals like? How far are you prepared to go? Who are you prepared to betray? Whose head are you prepared to step on? How many backs are you prepared to stab to get whatever you want? You know what the secret is? Here's the terrifying secret. If you are prepared to go as far as necessary to get whatever you want, you probably will get whatever you want. Most things are not truly unattainable. If you're prepared to be that guy and to step on your own grandmother's face to get it, you'll probably get it. And to me, that's terrifying. And if it's not terrifying to you, the devil probably already has one finger wrapped around you, and he's closing in on the rest. You need to think about where your priorities are and what you are already doing to achieve things in this life, in this world that is passing away anyway. Because those who are first, in fact, just to be clear, what the Master says is many that are first. He doesn't say everyone who is first. It's many who are first. Well, of that group, who's the many? The many are those who do the duplicitous things, who do the scheming things, who backstab, who step on, who step over, who lie and cheat and steal to get ahead. They will eventually, when the final day comes, have all things be made right. When the scales will be balanced, when wrongs will be put correct. And when that happens, they who profited from evil deeds will be brought down. And those who were the victims of their profiting will be elevated. That's the Lord's promise. I don't want to be on that side of the coin. I hope you don't either. I want to be the least among such common, heartless people. Last one, then I'm done. I want to be the least among the godless. Because the Master in that text we've been looking at back and forth says, you must be prepared to forsake all these special people in your life for my name's sake. You will find people in this world who have forsaken their mother and father. People who have forsaken their brother and sister. People who have forsaken their spouse or their children. You will find people who have even forsaken their own worldly ambitions, but they are not saved. Does Jesus want you? Is Jesus commanding you to forsake your kin? No. He's saying if it comes to that, he must be first. And you follow him, and if they don't, you're still following him, which means you're not with them anymore if it comes to that. You must be prepared to forsake them. But many are casually, pridefully, for their own selfish reasons, forsaking those people special in their lives. And that is not the way of Christ either. The only way you're going to be righteous, the only way you're going to be saved, is if you do the things that God asks of you, even the sacrifices God demands of you, for his name's sake. It is through him and him only where salvation is found. And if you try to take it upon yourself to live how you want to live, to forsake who you want to forsake for whatever reason you want to have, then you will find yourself rejected by the one you do not want to forsake. Listen to the Master, John 12, 47 through 49. If any man hear my words and believe not, I judge him not, for I came not to judge, but to save the world. He that rejects me and receives not my words has one that judges him. The word that I have spoken, the same will judge him in the last day. For I haven't spoken of myself, but the Father which sent me. He gave me a commandment, what I should say and what I should speak. If you do not receive his words, his reckonings, his decisions about what is righteous and unrighteous, his decisions about when and how you should forsake, if necessary, even your own mama or your wife or your children. If you don't follow his template, then you're a selfish, egotistical, prideful, self-righteous person. And no such person will enter into the kingdom of heaven forevermore. So be careful while you examine yourself and you look around and you say, well, look at all these people who are forsaking all these things. What's their motivation? Because yours must only be to work the will of him who came in the name of the Father. I want to be the least among those. There are so many ways you could expand this sermon that people try to be the top, the best, the most in this world, to the point where saying I am the least of something, of anything, it's considered self-deprecation. But I'm not practicing self-deprecation. I'm practicing humility. I'm practicing meekness and lowliness as my master did when he came in this world. The one being who, in all of human history, who didn't need to or deserve to practice meekness or mildness or lowliness because he was God, the King of Kings, yet he did to give me the template to follow so that I may say I will be the least. When all other people are living that way, trying to reach the top, I will be content down here, waiting and trusting in the Lord, the judge, to set me wherever he would have me be. If you are here this morning and you have felt worldly ambition, worldly influence, worldly desires cloud your Christian life, then put those things off and be restored to Jesus Christ. If you are here and you're not a Christian and you are living a life of worldly ambition, because that's the way you've been taught and that you've been shown in the world is the way to find some satisfaction, let me just cut to the end of your life. It will end without any satisfaction. You want true satisfaction, you want true peace and contentment, you get it through Jesus Christ and him alone. If you want to find him, you find him at the cross. And you reenact the death on his cross and the burial in the tomb, and you reenact his resurrection out of that tomb when you go to the watery grave and you bury your sins and you rise to walk in newness of life. If you have a need, please make it known right now as we stand.